Welcome back to Wanderpix. I'm Nate. We're just here to talk about Deadpool, a little bit of his history and everything, since he's coming out in Marvel Rivals next week. And just a little bit on me. I love Marvel Rivals. I typically play Vanguard and support. My mains are typically Invisible Woman or Magneto. And here are a couple of my friends I play with all the time, Eric and Chad. Hey, Eric, what's your favorite role and character in Marvel?
I'm a main support. I mostly play a lot of Rocket, but game has been. I will flex the tank. I also love.
Hi, I'm Shad. I also like to play flex most of the time, whatever is needed, but most of the time tank I prefer. I love being the front, stand behind me kind of person, so tank has always stand up to me. I also like support, and then DPS is there sometimes too, but if I have to. So anyways, let's talk a little bit more about Deadpool and some of his history.
Talk about where he's come from, where he's been, as well as his upcoming appearance in Marvel. We all know Deadpool. We all love Deadpool. What are some things that come to mind for you guys when you hear Deadpool? When you talk about Deadpool, what are some of the first things that come to mind?
Chimichangas, and is it like what pancakes are the smell of the victory in the morning or something? There's some comic panel about that where he has like a mountain of pancakes in front of him.
Yeah, for me, I was like a really big Deadpool fan, like maybe in like 2015, 16, and then the movies came out and stuff, and then like he's been like super, I don't know, popular, and like he's too mainstream now. So I don't know. I guess I like him.
Yeah, he has gotten a little meta, but going back to his origins, his first appearance was in New Mutants issue 98, which had a cover date of February 1991. Fun fact: Deadpool in this issue had no personality. He was just a very stereotypical assassin mercenary. It was a time in comics where characters were coming out quicker than they could make backstories for. And for the purposes of this issue, they just needed some kind of assassin to hunt down Cable. So they're like, hey, we'll make a Deathstroke copy. He was lacking such a personality to the point where they also introduced two other characters in the same issue because they were just like, throw everything at the wall. We got to get these characters out.
And so he was introduced in a comic with Cable?
Yes, he was. In this specific issue, he had been hired by some CEO who I can't remember, kind of irrelevant in the comics nowadays, to hunt down and kill Cable. And he was fighting alongside Gideon, who is Cable's son from the future, but Cable's past.
So was Cable already doing like the time travel shenanigans that he's...
Cable... if I remember correctly, had been introduced way earlier in New Mutants and was doing time travel shenanigans. He was at this point a like fairly big character, nowhere near the popularity of like Wolverine or Phoenix or anything like that. But still a recognizable character.
Okay. And at this point, Deadpool just random assassin hired to kill him. Does Deadpool get into any time travel shenanigans at this point, or is it just kind of like a one-off?
At this point, no.
The interesting thing about that is that the first comic that I had a long time ago, it was like a compendium comic where it had the whole story. It was Deadpool and Cable. And at that point, Deadpool was he was comedic. It was his character. And so they must have liked these two characters, the gruff, angry old man and the snarky side character that they kind of end up keeping. I see Domino also on this slide. Was she also introduced here? Because she's also a character that is with him quite often.
She was introduced in this issue, but we find out like 2 or 3 issues that this version of Domino is actually a shapeshifter called Copycat. And that the real Domino is somewhere else, but she is technically introduced in this issue. But in terms of Deadpool's origins, from what I've been able to find, it's actually fairly convoluted and a lot of like retcons and writers wanting to take it different directions. The one thing that is consistent is that he got cancer and then he got his powers. Specifically from the Weapon X program, the same people who implanted adamantium into Wolverine, the same people who created the Weapon X character. He was given his regenerating powers using Wolverine's DNA by Ajax and Dr. Killerum, I believe is his name.
So Ajax was always there, because in the first movie, I believe his name is Ajax too. And they made the whole joke that it's like, I think, a laundry detergent.
Yeah.
Do you think that was? I mean, I don't know if you know. Was that a joke they made in the comic, or do you think that they just made that connection for the movie?
I think it was most likely just for the movie. Because in the comics, Ajax at that time was going under the name A-Man, I believe. But his healing factor didn't kick in until way later when he was like gonna die. Because why Deadpool is named Deadpool is while he was in hospice, which is the like insane asylum where Dr. Killer, after doing all these experiments, all of the inmates had what was called the Deadpool of betting who was going to die next. And at this point in time, Deadpool really wanted to die. He was, in a lot of pain because of the cancer and also the torture that he was going through. Just in general, didn't want to be there, so he would try repeatedly to kill himself, and to the point where he killed another inmate, and that's why he was killed, is because that's the one big no-no in hospice. And so then they killed him, and then his regeneration factor kicked in, and then after that, when he became the anti-hero.
Interesting. So in the movie, they do a similar thing, but it's a little different because it's like the bar where they're a bunch of mercenaries, and they have the Deadpool, die as a mercenary. So it's a similar idea.
It is a similar idea. In the movies, there's Weasel, and he's the one running the Deadpool. But in the comics, from what I've been able to find, it's just Deadpool and a bunch of other random people.
I've heard some people refer to Deadpool's healing factor as more of a dying factor because it's not like it's healing healthy cells. It's just creating more and more cancerous cells. So he's surviving purely on just an excess of cells in his body, but none of them are healthy.
Which is precisely why he looks like that. His face is just nothing but tumors and cancerous holes. That's where Deadpool came from. What Deadpool has become now is probably one of the most famous Marvel heroes, and hands down the most famous hero. Over the last 10 years, 5 different news and media outlets have labeled him amongst the top 50 most influential superheroes of all time. It's the top 10 most influential Marvel superheroes of all time. Something interesting that I think.
Do you think Ryan Reynolds is to thank for that? I mean, he wasn't really. I mean, nobody really knew who he was before the first Deadpool.
True. He was a very niche character before the 2016 movie. I wouldn't be surprised because Ryan Reynolds is beloved by most people. The movie itself was pretty good, and we'll talk about the movie more in a second because that was the first time that they had done an R-rated superhero movie, and it had been a success. Not just a success, but like a huge success.
Were the Blade movies not a success?
Not to the same degree. I don't know what the return on investment for the Blade movies were, but I know that Deadpool 2016 had a budget of around 100 million. And then the in the domestic box office, it made 380 million or something like that. So it was 3 or 4 times the investment. Which I don't think Blade did as much.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you don't really find, because a lot of the times they'll relate it to just someone who's not a nerd and not a superhero fan know who they are, and most non-nerd, non-superhero fans don't know who Blade is. And I'm pretty sure at this point, because of the Ryan Reynolds movies, most people know who Deadpool is.
Yeah,
he even had a video game, I think, before the movie.
Yeah,
but I don't think most people even knew that. It was definitely I think personally the movies that really exploded it.
Yeah, because even if you haven't seen the movies, you've at least heard of them. You're at least aware of the fact that Ryan Reynolds plays Deadpool.
Well, also the movies had a fantastic ad campaign that I just loved, especially when they made it seem like a Valentine's romance movie, and which is very on brand for Deadpool, making a joke out of his advertising.
It's true. Earlier, we had kind of talked about the fact that Deadpool initially was just a kind of meaningless personality, lacking mercenary, and then eventually through Cable and Deadpool, he became this kind of quippy goofball character. From what I've noticed, he didn't become that comedic relief, fourth wall breaking character until the early 2000s. During one of his runs, I believe it's Joe Kelly, who's mostly attributed to giving him that personality, to the point where in some more recent adaptations, people have almost felt like he's become a satirization of the character, where he's a little too lighthearted and he isn't nitty and gritty enough, and it's just kind of edgy jokes for the sake of being edgy. So I thought that was interesting. Also,
never please everyone.
Yeah. I was interested to find out that Deadpool and Wolverine, the only reason that they are so closely associated is because of the fact that they're both from Weapon X. They're both Canadian, and so the comics just said, "Hey, let's have them fight." Like there's no backstory other than the fact that they were both part of Weapon X and they're both Canadian.
Don't they sometimes, I know like the X-Men have like a Black Ops division called X-Force. Isn't Deadpool sometimes on that team with Wolverine doing missions?
Yes, nowadays they've like actually created reasons for them to be working together. But
Okay.
back in like the 90s, they were like, "Hey, we need someone to fight Wolverine who isn't gonna die immediately. Let's throw in this guy who has a healing factor. He's also Canadian. He was also part of X or Weapon X. Like, it'll work out."
Okay.
Deadpool Now just had a movie come out at this point almost 2 years ago. He has had basically a solo title since like 97. Every single year there's been some that are limited run or full series where he is a titular character. So even though he hasn't really become super popular until recently in, the 2016 movie and shortly after that, he's been a cult favorite like from the beginning, which I found really interesting that he's just over the ages become this beloved character, and just by comic book fans, but by superhero fans at large. Really,
Yeah, I actually saw a video from the creator of Deadpool on TikTok, and he was talking something interesting about all the different costumes that all these different heroes go through. And Deadpool is one of the few that I think has almost never. I mean, he has like obviously as you can see like that tuxedo, but his main shtick, his costume hasn't really changed since the 90s.
yeah.
Um,
The red cowl with the black eyes or the black circles and the white eyes. It's been his look ever since he was introduced.
I will say the X-Force costume just takes the exact same thing. It just makes the red gray and makes his eyes red.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty cool mix-up.
It is.
If you put him in Marvel Rivals, I hope that's an alternate skin.
I think that'll be his recolor is the gray with the red eyes.
Actually, speaking of Marvel Rivals, if you look at the Deadpool image on the right there, he has on his hood, he has that little bit of the tassel. I'm not actually sure what you would call it at the top of his hood.
Yeah.
Now that I've always actually seen in his comics, and that's been big part of his art. Now the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool went away with that, probably because they thought it looked a little silly. But Marvel Rivals is bringing that back, and he has a little bit of that tassel again. And I've actually seen a lot of people online complaining because they think it looks stupid. And I'm always like, oh, but that's how it actually looked in the comics. They're going for a more, they're making their own style with him having a jacket, but they are doing a more comic accurate little weird link tassel.
Yeah, I think Deadpool though inherently I feel like he is a silly person. Like one of the biggest like friendships in comics is Deadpool and Spider-Man, and it's just them like running around quipping and making jokes. Like Deadpool is inherently a little silly because he doesn't take anything seriously. He's like, I can't die. Why do I care?
Half of his personality is just making meta jokes, breaking the fourth wall. He's gonna be a little goofy every now and then, even if he's killing people. As I mentioned, he's had basically a titular run every single year since 97, which was 6 years after he was introduced. And yeah, like you were saying, Nate, he's had several run-ins with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is probably the only non-X-Men character who was strongly associated with Deadpool. I would say the Deadpool Killology is probably one of the most well-recognized runs that he's had, I would say. But are there any particular runs that you guys have read or have heard about that are interesting?
Yeah, the Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe is obviously the biggest one. For those who don't know, he basically goes through and kills every single person. And then, well, I don't know if I want to spoil it, but, that's kind of, I don't know if it's where he got to start. He probably broke the fourth wall before that, but he does, exit the comic and go and kill his writers as well. At the bottom left there, I haven't read it in a while, so I don't remember exactly how it happens or what happens, but I read it when I was like 2015. So I do notice that it says parental advisory, not for kids, which I always find interesting. That is at 2012 is when they kind of started. He was, the beginning of like this R-rated Marvel character.
I think it's funny that they had to put that on the comic issue where he's holding a severed head and covered blood.
So it should be self-explanatory.
People didn't know, yeah.
But it's like one of those things where I think most parents at the time, Marvel was getting popular. That's when Avengers came out, but most parents probably still thought comics, oh, those are always just for children. Comics equals children. It's the same thing where I still hear a lot of things where people say cartoons and things like that equals children. So I think they had to put that. I mean, I actually think in Deadpool when it first came out, the movie. They had to Ryan Reynolds comes on screen and he tells everyone in graphic details of how babies are made because he wants to really emphasize that this is an R-rated movie for all of the parents that were like superhero movie. Let's bring our kids. I think a lot of parents might be ignorant to that.
Yeah, definitely. I will say I don't remember what issue it's in or what run it is, but there is this one Deadpool comic I really like where there's this girl who is feeling suicidal and Deadpool helps her. The way he does it, though, is like, hey, let me show you that life is worth living by taking her on just like an absolute rampage around the city, like fighting criminals, blowing people up with rocket launchers and stuff, making her just have like a day as Deadpool pretty much. But it ends in like a sweet moment where he takes her to the hospital, convinces her to get some help, and she like just really appreciates that he made her love life again.
Yeah. There's one other, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier about how his powers are secretly like killing him and keeping him alive. There's one that I read, and I actually don't know if I read it or if I saw like a YouTube video of it, but there's one where these people are trying to take his powers because they want the regenerative healing, and they actually do. They take it, but then it just completely kills them. Because they don't realize that his healing factor is so strong that it is killing and like keeping him alive, and so it like overtakes their bodies. Because the only reason his healing factor works is because he has cancer literally everywhere. And so it doesn't overheal and just murder him. Because he's constantly in this flux state of death and life, which is another huge thing is his relationship with the actual figure of death.
Early in the comics, Deadpool has a pet that is a clone of Carnage, the symbiote, and takes the form of a hyena, and its name is Princess.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool. I would love to see that, like either in Marvel Rivals or a movie or something like that. I think that'd be really cool to see him just team up with a hyena symbiote.
Well, speaking of Deadpool's pets, he temporarily had one pet who is in Marvel Rivals. I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but he has Jeff the Land Shark. It is originally Gwenpool's pet, and her comic is about to get canceled. And this is like in real life, her comic's getting canceled, and so they bring that into the story. And so she's looking for someone to hold and to keep care of Jeff the Land Shark, and she gives him to Deadpool for a little while before I think he joins the Avengers or something. But anyways,
who knows?
Yeah. In movies and TV, obviously we've already talked about the 2016 movie as well as its sequels. Something interesting I found out is there was a canceled Deadpool animated TV show. It was supposed to be produced by FXX as well as Donald and Stephen Glover. It was going to be animated by Titmouse, who are the people who did the animation for Invincible, for Legend of Vox Machina, for the Boys animated show. And it just got canceled, supposedly for creative differences. Donald Glover has said after it was canceled that he suspected some racism was involved because it was a writer's room full of black people. And he said that the notes that they got from production was that it was a little too black. So that was just really interesting that it would have been a smashing success. We've seen the amazing art that Titmouse can do. We know the wonderful stories that Donald and Stephen Glover can tell. And it just got canceled for quote unquote creative reasons.
That's stupid.
It's incredibly stupid.
The only time I've seen Deadpool in like a TV show is like some Disney Spider-Man show or whatever he gets up in for a couple episodes, and he has a really annoying voice. Sorry to voice actor, you did a great job, but I don't know if they were trying to make him annoying, but he came across as annoying instead of funny.
That's true. He did have several crossovers with like Avengers TV shows as well as Spider-Man TV shows. But say this canceled show were to get brought back, who is someone that you would like to see play Dead? Who is a voice actor that you'd love to see taking?
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, Ryan Reynolds is the voice of Deadpool right now. Now he does play more of this kind of. I mean, Deadpool's obviously obnoxious. He's the merc with the mouth, but he does. I don't know if I fully can handle that much Ryan Reynolds, but maybe it's kind of his voice. So
I mean, that's fair. He has done a pretty good job of interpreting one of the more beloved adaptations of.
I almost would like it to be just someone I've never heard of, just because then I don't have any associations of this with anything else. Because we've talked about this before. Like we'll watch a show like, oh, I recognize this voice actor from this other project or this other thing, and it kind of takes me out of it. I'd like to be someone completely unknown.
Moving on to video games. Obviously, the reason we're making this video right now is just announced it becoming the Marvel Rivals. At the time of recording, it's going to be a week before he actually enters the game. But Chad, like you mentioned, he had a solo title game back in 2013, well before the movie. And what's interesting is the movie actually partially killed the game, because the game came out in 2013, produced by Activision, made by High Moon Studios.
Okay.
And the at the time, the character wasn't very well known, so sales initially weren't really good. But it was pulled entirely from online stores in 2014 when 20th Century Fox acquired the rights to Deadpool for the movie. So if they hadn't done that, the game probably would have done a lot better and a lot more people would have played it.
interesting.
So it's from what I can tell, it isn't a good game. It's very
Oh, it's not? I was actually going to say I liked it. But I was actually so young at the time that I mostly just watched like people play it, let's plays and stuff. But I remember there being a lot of comedic and funny moments, and I thought they got the idea of him pretty well. Like there's a whole scene where you can slap Wolverine to wake him up or something and it goes on for like 3 minutes if you just want to keep slapping him. That kind of gets like kind of humor.
Yeah. From what I've seen, it is a fairly faithful adaptation of the character. It's just the plot and game mechanics were very shallow and repetitive, at least from the reviews that I've seen. I haven't played it, so I don't know for certain.
I'm in the same boat as Chad. Like, it was an M-rated game. I didn't buy it, so I just watched some Let's Play of it, and it looked fun, but I was also young, and it's been years since I've even thought about it. But yeah. I do remember there being some comedic, like, fourth wall kind of breaking stuff where you could, like, get into, like, secret levels that took you, like, outside of the actual video game kind of thing.
Because the purpose of the game is that Deadpool is writing it and rewriting it as you play. They went all out with the concept of a game made by Deadpool, but unfortunately it just kind of fell flat initially and then didn't get a chance to take off because of the movie.
Yeah. It does seem that his 2013 video game adaptation, it doesn't have the little tassel thing either. It's more in line with the Ryan Reynolds movie costume.
It's true.
I think a lot of people don't like the tassel because they think it looks silly, and I think looking silly is part of it. I don't know. I'm not a big. I like it, and so when I think people start hating on it, I'm always like, oh, well, it's different. Spider-Man doesn't have it, but Deadpool does because he's this weird guy. Like with Deadpool coming to Marvel Rivals, what do you think role and team ups and things? I want to know what you guys think his role will be. Personally, I think that he has to be a tank, and everyone on all the comments are going to be like, no DPS, no DPS. But dude has a healing factor, and I know Wolverine is a DPS, but I also think Wolverine should have been a tank. These two dudes are like unkillable, and that's kind of one of their main shticks. I think it would be fun if he was a tank. Now, I don't know how you fully balance it, but if he had some type of, slow passive healing, or if it was fast and he was a tank and that, you had to kind of team up to take him out, would be really interesting and different. Now, for team ups, it's obviously got to be Spider-Man or Wolverine, and maybe Jeff would be my 3 team ups that he would have to fit in somehow.
I have ideas for the team ups. One is like we've already seen the Human Torch can pick up the thing and carry him. I would love to see Spider-Man be able to just throw Deadpool, or Jeff when he goes into his little under the ground swim form. Maybe he can pull Deadpool with him and carry him along that way. Or for Wolverine, I think it'd be funny if Wolverine just stabbed through Deadpool and used him as a human shield.
Yeah, and that would go to him being like a tank. It'd be kind of
I think he should be a tank. I think because like he does in the comics, and they even do this in the 2013 game. He has like a teleporting belt. You could have him be a tank that has a teleport ability. He can use his swords, like in the movie, to block bullets as like a shield to deflect enemy attacks. And then you could have like his guns and swords for like ranged and melee options. I think it could be a little interesting to have a teleporting tank that has a deflect.
That would be really interesting. A lot of people have been theorizing that he's going to be a new secret fourth role, or that he's just going to be all three roles, and there's going to be 3 different stat plots.
I was gonna say, if he does 3 roles, could you play as 3 Deadpools in one game then on one team?
Well, and that's what I was wondering. Is I feel like that would be a little too complex to have all 3 available at one time. I think they're actually just going to have him be a different role each week, cycle it through with the weekly resets, like they did when they first teased him. But if he has to be one, I think tank is the right option.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you think he's going to be, does anyone have a theory for him being a strategist? Because that's obviously a possibility with them doing their little tease. How will he be a strategist? He gives his healing to others.
I think it's going to be a very dumb meta joke. Oh, he has healing bullets. He shoots you and he heals you.
Well, I think
that would be very in character for Deadpool.
Well, going back to the comic run, I think it was you that mentioned it, Chad, about the other guys stealing his healing factor and it hurting them. I think it would be funny if he can heal others, but he can like debuff enemies, like put vulnerability on them because he heals the enemy, but it hurts them instead. Like he gives other people cancer. You could have it to be where he's kind of like Gambit at the moment, where he can switch between like a healing mode and a like a life steal kind of thing, or whatever it is Gambit does. DPS would just be boring because he's just going to shoot people with guns and stab them with swords. No offense, those are awesome, but it's just another Punisher or Blade.
That's fair. What do you guys think makes Deadpool so unique? Because initially he was just a personality lacking mercenary. He was literally a 1-to-1 copy of Deathstroke. What do you guys think has made him such a beloved character?
I mean, it's obviously his fourth wall breaking. Now, my question about that, though, would be, do anybody know, was She-Hulk or was Deadpool the first kind of fourth wall breaker, or was there someone else in Marvel Comics that was fourth wall breaking?
I feel like She-Hulk's been around longer than Deadpool, so I think She-Hulk was before him. But I don't know if there's anyone else before She-Hulk. There probably was, but I just don't know who it would be. I think what makes Deadpool unique is kind of like his personality, because he is like this sarcastic, quippy guy. But there's also points of him where like his favorite superhero is Captain America. He idolizes him. And like there's times in the comics where he'll have these moments where he feels bad that he's not living up to Captain America's like standard. And then he's also out here joking with Spider-Man and helping him out. Like he's clearly a troubled soul, but he wants to do good. Just the only way he knows how is excessive violence.
And I mean, nothing's better than that. Is like, I mean, the anti-hero or the guy that has the depression has issues, but then it has this little soft side to him. That's why everyone loves the Geralt of Rivia or the Last of Us. What's his name?
Joel,
yeah. And so that always helps add to a character.
The rugged badass with a heart of gold.
Yeah, because if you look at them, like him and Wolverine have the same start in the Weapon X program, but whereas Wolverine becomes this gruff, like, I'm the best at what I do, and what I do isn't pretty kind of guy, and I'm just out here being all depressed about being a killer. Deadpool is the opposite. He's like, yeah, like the only thing I'm good at is killing, so I might as well have fun with it. But you also have moments where he's just, he loves food. He's making a bunch of chimichangas, pancakes, waffles. He's out here helping people that are suicidal. He has a pet shark that he just has fun with. Those are originally Gwenpools, right? But he's taken this tragedy and made it this kind of lighthearted, fun thing in a way. But there's still the sadness in it. Also, I think Deadpool's an excuse for the writers to just get as crazy as possible. Like, he's dating the concept of death. But he's also had like a wife and kid in the past and other things. It's like weird, but like his main love interest is death itself.
So many love interests. He has dated a prostitute. He has dated death. He was married to a succubus. He's had so many love interests in there just because.
Man,
what are you gonna do
for him? Here's a little hidden thing. Now, someone should fact check me on this or something to make sure, but I have read somewhere that he doesn't actually like chimichangas in the comics, that he just likes the word.
Deadpool specifically says in the comics he doesn't even know what a chimichanga is. He doesn't know where it came from. He just thinks the word is fun.
Yes.
Aw, that's a little sad. Get this man a chimichanga. Writers, I need you to get this man a chimichanga.